What's up, guys? Not nearly enough caffeine for this job, like ever. It's one of the reasons I'm always laughing when people say, oh, yeah, draft is over. You're going to take a couple days? Big day in Pittsburgh sports, obviously, with the Penguins firing Mike Sullivan as head coach. Nobody saw that coming. I mean, nobody. It was one of those rare cases of a press release just dropping on everybody's heads like a bomb. You know, nobody even broke the story or anything. It was just, I'm not even sure where to go with that particular subject. I know that that's what everybody in this city is talking about right now. This is a two-time Stanley Cup championship coach who did a lot of good things, put a lot of passion and pride into his work. I can tell you from personal experience, this is a really, really good human and the consummate professional, and that I'll miss him. I'm not going to speak for others, but I'm going to guess that pretty much everybody who encountered Mike Sullivan is going to miss him. It's a crazy time in general for the Penguins and, you know, where they go next. But I'll tell you what, you can't accuse Kyle Dubas of just sitting and waiting to see how things are going to play out. He saw some stuff that he didn't like, clearly didn't like. Of course, there was another event over the weekend, and being that this is the double shot of Steelers, we'll get into that as well. The NFL draft came and went with the local team becoming much bigger, and it also led to maybe my favorite response that any of the various Steelers coaches or players or anybody had over the weekend. And it came from Arthur Smith, because he was asked about how, if this fits the Arthur Smith offense, meaning adding more big bodies, adding DK Metcalf and all that. And his response was, we're looking for big plays. And they're not looking to go 1.5 yards in a cloud of dust. They're looking to make things happen. And the same applied, obviously, to the other side of the football. And that's pretty neat. It sounds as if these will be conflicting goals, but they're not. They're not. And I'm going to talk about that with Chris Halleck when he comes in as to why that is. And speaking of why, Mario points out that it's YA Black. I got this one right now. YA Black. Like Chris is nodding. I see him in the background there. The Darnell Washington of the defense. Oh, no. He would eat Darnell Washington for breakfast, and that's saying something. Darnell's a really, really big dude. Oh, man. John says here he gets the last word before we go to break. Let's give the hometown kid, Andy Weidel, his flowers. Andy has a big role in this. I was actually a little disappointed he wasn't one of the people that was brought out to speak with reporters over the weekend, but he's a guy that's got a big part in this process from beginning to end. And if you're going to give credit or blame to anyone for the draft, don't leave him out. You might notice, especially in my writing, that I never ever do that. I always throw in Weidel's name, whether it's a praise or a criticism there. Denny says that he wishes Mike Sullivan the best and appreciate his contributions here. We'll be taking those today as well. I'm stunned if that's not showing. I'm completely stunned, and it's going to take a little bit here for me to get into football. Let's take a break here and then come right back with Chris.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
Welcome back. Joined now by Chris Halleck. Carol Toth points out, Chris, that another Mike Sullivan seems to have left Pittsburgh, the one who coached for the Steelers. They didn't announce anything. He's not in the media guide or whatever. He had been reduced to a much lesser role, unless I'm misinterpreting something. He was the quarterback's coach. Then he became like the partial coordinator with Eddie Faulkner, and then they kept him on for a year as a something. And
senior
now he's
offensive assistant.
And now he's not in the media guide anymore. Not the same scope of story in this city at all. Chris, what was your reaction this morning?
I let out an audible. Wow. Well, yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That was my audible reaction. And of course, I go into work mode at that point, even though that's not my beat. It's still, we're still a team at DK Pittsburgh Sports. And so, we, immediately was like, okay, well, we got to get on this. And, throughout the day we've been on it. And, it was pretty shocking. Did not expect that. And not to try to make jokes about, anybody losing their job, but it is very, very interesting that we also find out that the other Mike Sullivan is no longer employed in Pittsburgh. So
also a really good dude. I don't mean to make light of him. Wonderful to deal with, and everything else here. But there's a 10-year head coach with 2 Pittsburgh championships, his name, and these are not comparable.
No.
In scope in any way, shape, or form. My own sense right now, Chris, is that the Penguins are going to have to, let's put it this way. Dubas has to get this right. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
He's made it really clear. He's not going to go find some retread. He's not going to go chasing John Tortorella or Mike Babcock, certainly, or Bruce Boudreau, maybe not even Rick Tocchet.
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to be out in Vancouver here soon. But when you're talking about who do you replace, where do you find a young, hungry coach, which is what everybody says they wants, and what Dubas was just suggesting that he would get was, where do you find that person to come in and also manage Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Chris Letang, Eric Carlson, Brian Rust? These guys are not new or on the block. They're qualified to be coaches themselves with all of their massive, intensive knowledge of hockey. And it's really something to try to picture bringing in, one of these kids. Like Dubas was citing Spencer Carberry in Washington, and I get that. Okay, Carberry's succeeding right now. That's the success story what the Capitals are doing. But man, all you see in the NHL are retreads, and they're not going to get one.
Yeah, it is interesting because you do see a lot of coaches kind of change, obviously, pay a little bit of attention to what the Dallas Stars do. And they've done that recently with their head coach.
Mm-hmm.
He's not, Dallas is not at the first place where he's had success. I also go back to what the Penguins did the last time they were coming out of a rebuild. And man, they hired Eddie Olczyk. And I know that was not a hire to try to compete. That was a hire to get through a really painful period. And that was a very different rebuild than this one is. Obviously they aren't going full blown or, completely tearing everything apart and rebuilding from the ground up. But when they did kind of obviously decide to make a different move, they brought in Michel Therrien, and I maybe it's that type of a coach. I don't know. You would obviously, you've covered the team way longer than I have, a couple of games under my belt, but it just seems like that type of a guy. Obviously he got them to a Stanley Cup final, and he definitely changed the culture. That one day. That one rant alone really spoke to what he did for a young team. And so I think the main goal here has to be not just can they try to win one more with the core. It's what can they do to get the most out of the young guys that are coming up.
Build. Absolutely. It's building. And, the last thing I have to say about Sully, as you just touched off something here with that, with something that you said, there are times when a coach comes in and doesn't really make much of a difference, but gets all the credit.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what happened toward that 2016 Stanley Cup in 2017. He was a massive part of both. In the first year, the team was really floundering. He comes in, takes over from Mike Johnston, and boom, championship.
Yep.
The following year, the Penguins had, remember this, all kinds of injuries all through the playoffs, not just in the final against the Predators.
They didn't have Letang for the entire playoff run
at all.
No.
And they had guys with broken hands and broken whatever, and he was able to get the absolute maximum out of some guys that didn't even really last in the NHL.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about some of the names on that 2017 roster, yeah. By the way, for all of you people complaining here about talking about Steelers, I got news for you. This is Pittsburgh, the only city where all three teams have the same first name and the same set of colors. And this is a really, 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 really big story in Pittsburgh.
I feel like we'd be talking about Mike Tomlin. If Mike Tomlin were ever fired, that it would be.
We'd be talking about it, yeah, on the
everywhere.
Pirates show.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you're not from here or you've never been here, and I know a lot of Steelers fans haven't, sorry, not sorry, as the cool kids say. But don't go getting edgy with us like Leo tried to. Did I join the wrong show? You know.
Well, we're going to be talking about Steelers too.
Yeah, we cover at our site, which is not YouTube, it's DK Pittsburgh Sports. We cover all three of Pittsburgh's teams, and we cover them with an equal focus and equal intensity and equal approach. And this is a story that is not equal to anything else in the city right now, this Sullivan thing. That said, we can talk about football too. Carl says, I'm a Yankees and a Steelers fan, so none of this applies to me. Okay. Pittsburgh. First name. Let's see if I start any good ones here to get us going here, Chris. If you see any, you can feel free to jump in on anything that looks like it's a good old draft question.
I do see some love on the from the Chalk Talk that I did this morning on Caleb Johnson, which I do appreciate because a lot of work goes into those. But that one ended up being a lot longer than the Chalk Talks are normally going to be. Chalk Talks are probably going to be between 10 and 12 minutes. That one was almost double that, but I really wanted to show as soon as I saw the comparisons to Najee Harris, the Najee 2.0 stuff,
that's just based on the 40. That's people who aren't even watching.
Yeah.
So that's 4.57 40. So he's slow. So he's Najee. Yeah. There, I know football.
Here's another thing to bring up too. Awful to hear about Ryan Watts. For those who don't know, Ryan Watts, after consulting the team, consulting with Ryan, his representation with the medical, with the doctors and everything, is that they are urging him pretty much to medically retire from the neck injury he suffered in the preseason finale against Detroit last year. At the time we were thinking, we were told by Tomlin it's just a stinger. He was in a neck brace then for a couple of weeks. He stayed with the team the entire season, worked with all the guys who were on injured reserve, tried to come back, ended up having a surgery in January. And then now his football career seems to be over. And it just goes to show these guys put a lot on the line. And this guy never even got a chance to play a regular season snap before his career ended. So, I really feel for the guy because he worked really, really hard to come back, and just really feel for him.
Brian Jonker equates hockey to handball. Dude, how far from Pittsburgh do you live? No, really. I mean, this city is nuts. About hockey. I mean, you can't be within 400 miles. That's going to be my guess here. That's my radius on where Brian lives, that he can't be anywhere near Pittsburgh to say something like that. Who says that in the year 2025? I'm still looking for draft stuff here. Everybody says, I wanted the wrong show, hockey, whatever else. They're really taking it hard. Jeff Rossi says, hey, guys, since the Steelers did not draft a wide receiver, does that mean they're focused on keeping George Pickens either via franchise tag or a new contract? First off, George is signed. Okay, George has a deal for next year. I don't know why, if you were the Steelers, you would entertain doing anything. They don't have to do anything. Yeah. They both, the team and the player, signed a contract that's, I'm sure, tucked away in a safe place somewhere over in the NFL's offices in New York. So why would you do that, Chris?
No, I mean, they can. I don't understand. Again, like some people just hear, oh, the Steelers are taking calls, so they're going to possibly trade George Pickens. Again, Omar's just doing his job if he's taking calls. That's what a GM does. They've had zero intention to actually try to trade George Pickens. They want to have 2 number 1 receivers, which is what they have. And they may not have actually selected a receiver in the draft, but they used a 2nd-round pick to get DK Metcalf. So I almost want to count that as part of the draft class. I understand officially it's not, but they massively upgraded the receiver room using their 2nd-round pick, just like they used their 1st-round pick in 2020 to get Minkah Fitzpatrick. He was already in the league, but that's what that 1st-round pick was used for, was getting Minkah Fitzpatrick. And sometimes if you can use a really good draft pick to get a really good player, it's just as good of a use of that pick as it is actually taking a player.
Mike says the Steelers definitely added a ton of size to the team. That might actually be accurate if you were adding tonnage. Like if you were doing, you know what I'm saying? He says, by that, you mean 2,000 pounds. But what was interesting, Chris, and what I wanted to bring up with you based on the football portion of the intro today was you can get bigger, and what it does is it actually expands your arsenal. It doesn't limit it. You know, so if you're asking Arthur Smith, does this fit more than, and the question came up, and it was a fair one. Does this look or feel more like an Arthur Smith offense to you? And Art comes back and says, well, we want to go for big plays. Yeah. Now, if you've got a big, beefy offensive line and you've got big tight ends and they buy you more time, buy your quarterback more time to serve, then you're going to throw downfield. You're going to be open across the middle. You're going to be able to run around the edges, and you're going to be able to run up the middle. It just expands everything that you want to do. Mm-hmm. So the big players can lead to a bigger playbook. And I think that was maybe my favorite little thing that happened over the entire weekend, was picturing the Steelers offense as just being more diverse.
Yeah.
In addition to more dynamic.
That's why I think, when for those here who also watch Matt Williamson and I do the Southside beat, I think both him and I have already said that regardless of what happens at quarterback, the Steelers offense is already better than it was last year. Granted, you're relying on a rookie running back. I get that. It's not an established running back like Najee Harris. But the receiver room is 1,000% better just from DK. I mean, the second that Omar Khan hung up the phone to execute the trade with DK Metcalf, or to get DK Metcalf, the receiver room got immensely better. With Caleb Johnson, and to your point about the explosiveness of the offense, that's all Caleb Johnson did at Iowa, was have explosive runs. 28 carries of 15-plus yards, 21 carries of 20-plus yards, 6 carries of 40-plus yards. That's all he did at Iowa, was have chunk runs. That's what you want to have. And he runs what I would call Arthur Smith's bread and butter of running wide zone, outside zone. That doesn't mean that's all Arthur Smith wants to do every time he hands the ball off. You have to do different things to keep the defense on its heels, obviously. But the great thing is that Caleb Johnson has a lot of traits that make him diverse, that make him more than just an outside zone runner, which you would normally call like a slasher type. He's more than just a slasher because he can do other things than that. So I do think that adding DK Metcalf, adding Caleb Johnson, specifically those two, definitely makes the offense more explosive. And then if you do add a certain quarterback to the mix, you have a 4-time MVP who isn't afraid to throw to the middle of the field. You have a very well established rapport with another guy who has proven to be in a Steelers uniform and not be afraid to throw to the middle of the field. And now a rookie quarterback that you took in the 6th round who's not afraid to throw to the middle of the field. And guess where Arthur Smith likes to throw the football, especially out of play action? To the middle of the field.
To the middle of the field.
Yeah.
Chris Santana says, I'm a huge Pittsburgh fan living in California, and I've been to Pittsburgh 6 times in my life. I hate basketball because Pittsburgh has no team. We used to have a decent college program. And we don't. I'm not even taking a shot at Jeff Cable. I just think NIL has just changed college basketball forever. Duquesne makes it to the NCAA tournament one year. Robert Morris makes it the next year. That's what college basketball has become here. And that's, of course, the only basketball that we have. The NBA would never, ever, 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 ever work in this town. We are a hockey town when it comes to the winter months. In particular, obviously, from January onward back to whenever the Penguins used to be in the playoffs. Donnan says, DK, what did the Steelers miss in the draft? Now, I don't know if you're asking about a player there or if you're asking about a position. I'm going to guess it's the position. And I'm going to repeat here, and this is in the form of praise for what the Steelers did, that I really hoped that they would end up with the positions that they wanted because they were taking best player available. And when you look at the Sawyer pick in the 4th round, that's the one that jumps out to me. You're sitting there in the 4th round, everybody, myself included, are thinking, go ahead and get your quarterback. Go ahead. Go right ahead and do that. And they didn't. Why? There was an edge rusher. By the way, Chris, Sawyer was up there in some pre-draft rankings. Like I saw him in the 30s in a couple of them. Yeah. Which I didn't even bother with him beforehand. But if that comes to you, I'm sorry, you're not going to sweat out. What's the room for him? Where are you going to put him? You find a place. It's just talent. Don't worry about what they're going to do for you in 2025. Worry about what it's going to do, or focus on what it's going to do for you overall. That's where these drafts needed to go.
Yeah, I don't know if they really missed on anything. I don't think it's a bad draft at all. Obviously time will tell, how the draft actually ends up playing out, but they went, the one thing that nobody can actually say is that they didn't execute their plan. They 1000% executed their plan. Their plan was to, number one, address defensive tackle. That was their priority, and they did that right away. And then they did it again. And then I also throw, again, a lot of people think edge, and because the Steelers run a 3-4 defense, that outside linebackers don't count when you talk about the defensive line, but they kind of do, because the Steelers play in sub package more than anything else, and those edge rushers are up on the line when they're in sub package football. So edge rushers absolutely count as defensive line. So I count 3 in Derek Harmon, Y.A. Black, and then Jack Sawyer in terms of adding to the defensive front. So they did that, and then obviously they got more physical as well. They brought in, Caleb Johnson, who, while he's light on his feet, he's still a bigger back, and he can still create a lot of extra yards by breaking tackles. And then, you look, later on, obviously 7th round. I try not to judge 7th round picks too much because they're 7th round picks. But you got a guy who is the son of a former Steelers tight end in Carson Bruner. Really fast, but also one of those hard-nosed types that's going to earn a lot of snaps on special teams if he gets a roster spot.
There's got some more good draft stuff coming in here, Chris. Actually, there's a lot of comments in general, and I'm having a difficult time navigating them because when they come in through the system at this rate, and then I have some people getting mad at me. Why don't you answer my question? We have 1,726 people in here right now. Well, actually add 2 to that, because that changes all the time as well.
Add another 10 to that, like right now.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, it keeps jumping.
Yeah, that's how that goes. Jay Mood says the New York Post gave the Steelers a D grade. I found that hilarious. I can't believe anybody would mention or care what a New York newspaper would think about a Pittsburgh football team. Kevin Herzog says, in my opinion, this was one of the most high value drafts per pick that I've seen in Pittsburgh in a long time. I'm not hearing a whole lot of that, Chris. Meaning from our community here, or from really, really anybody. There's even if you think about the way Mike Tomlin and Omar Khan carried themselves over the weekend, it wasn't that, that big Tomlin just, ate the last cookie in the cookie jar smile when he comes into the room. There wasn't any of that either. It was just, let's just sit down and talk about what we did. Everything about it just felt very, very businesslike. The whole draft, the whole approach to it. And by the way, even some of the reaction.
Yeah, I think maybe what Kevin's trying to say there when you're talking about high value is what they got in each round. Derek Harmon in the first round, obviously, when you look at what was there, Max, obviously, and then you match that with what the Steelers were needing. He was probably one of the best ones from a not just the Steelers perspective, but even from a wide perspective for everybody who knew they weren't taking Shedeur Sanders. But then you look at, Caleb Johnson in the third round. A lot of people didn't expect him to fall to 83. Jack Sawyer in the fourth round. A lot of people didn't expect him to fall as far as he did. And then Will Howard in the sixth. A lot of people had Will Howard going maybe fourth round. To get him 2 rounds later, I think that's what you're probably talking about when you're talking about value. Because if the Steelers had a second round pick and they took Caleb Johnson with that second round pick, it kind of aligns with where he was expected to go. But the fact is they got him a whole round later than most people expected. So the value gets a lot better because it's a third round pick instead of a second round pick. You're paying him less. And the investment of that pick is obviously a lot less than it would be for a second rounder. You use the second rounder to get an all-pro wide receiver.
DV says he's surprised that I haven't brought up Mon Adams getting cut yet. It's not official yet. It's also not at all unexpected. I have a soft spot in my heart for this guy. He was one of my favorite people in the room.
No, he's awesome.
Yes. And to have him, to have him be one of those guys that's going to be cast aside because of this influx. I mean, that was not exactly, and anybody wouldn't have had to go out on a limb there to guess that. Between Mon Adams, I mentioned Isaiah Loudermilk over the weekend as being a candidate for that. This was how did Carl Dunbar put it over the weekend? Was it they're going to eat? They have to go get their food or something like that. He welcomes the competition. He welcomes the hunger, in this case, metaphorically. And, good for them. If they didn't sense that before, meaning the people that were at that position, meaning other than Cam, of course, then they're going to certainly sense it now. This is, it's an area that became, rightly or not, fairly or not, big time magnified by one game, the one in Baltimore. And they all got burned by it. They got stung by it, and they reacted to it. They really did.
I really truly believe that was throughout this entire process, going as far back as the Senior Bowl, when that was a lot more fresh for them. Obviously, that was a kick in the pants for them. 100%. It was a kick in the pants that they were. Yeah, there are some losses that like the Chiefs loss. You just get completely outclassed. Like, they just go to show like how much better they were at being a football team than the Steelers were. But when you lose the way you lose to your rival, a rival in which you have had a lot of success over in recent years, and you lose that way, that might make you rethink some things. And I think that's why immediately it was set in motion. Mike Tomlin even said that he started to think about that before he even got in the shower after the game. So that's, it definitely had a huge impact on what they were going to do this offseason.
Jonathan points out, I don't know how much longer you wait on Mark Robinson to develop either. Robinson's obviously at a different position. And Robinson's status on the team, I think, might be dictated more by, let's say, for example, see, the thing with M-Rob is he's in on special teams too, okay? And a lot of these guys, we just talk about them for what their default positions are on offense or defense. But if they're on special teams, believe you me, Danny Smith thinks of them as that, okay? And M-Rob is a guy who, man, when he sees his target, he closes on them in a freakish way.
Yeah.
And I think you can always find room for that regardless of what form of special teams the NFL happens to be utilizing in a given year.
I've always called Mark Robinson a heat-seeking missile without a guidance chip.
That's good. Without a what?
Without a guidance chip. Like, he just goes and he tries to hit warm bodies as often as he possibly can. And unfortunately, that doesn't always work well when you're playing actual defense. Like, I can remember specifically the game against the Packers, not last season, but the season before, in which he was going to, if he would have made contact with Aaron Jones, he would have sent him flying back 5 yards. But he didn't hit Aaron Jones. He hit the offensive lineman that filled the gap to block him. Now,
he just happened to be there.
And so he just hit him. It's like, okay, well, that's not the way you just play. So again, heat-seeking missile that's missing a guidance chip. The one thing that I would talk about that when talking about the linebacker room is adding Carson Bruner. Remember, a lot of people are going to be like, he was only drafted because of who his dad is. He's also a guy who had double-digit tackles on special teams the last 2 years at Washington. They brought him in to possibly earn a spot on the roster because he can be a really good special teams player. That's what you do with 7th-round picks.
Will Howard in the 6th was a steal, says our man Jay. I'm gonna have a hard time disputing that one.
Yeah,
you know, I thought, and I'll still say this: if the Steelers had taken him in the 4th round instead of his teammate out of Ohio State, Sawyer, not one eyebrow anywhere would have been raised, and not just because all of these dopes who don't cover the Steelers had been saying, they got to draft a quarterback, they got to draft a quarterback, got to draft a quarterback. When the people who are actually in the building talking to actual people are saying, no.
Yeah.
No. So they never let that go, and it ended up whatever. They got themselves a good quarterback with an uphill trajectory to him, and it doesn't take much to spot character in this kid, does it?
No, and that's the one thing you definitely get from Will Howard is that you get a high character guy. He's also really smart. He's a smart football player. It's just a lot of the times he'll make a really, really great coach one day. Like, I really do think he could become, if he doesn't pan out and become an actual, like, legitimate NFL starter, which you're taking in the 6th round, the chances are you don't become that. But don't want to put a ceiling on a guy. Tom Brady was a 6th round pick, for example. You never want to put a ceiling on a guy. But if he doesn't turn into a starter, he could probably become a really, really good either backup for a while, or he can become a really good coach. He's a really smart guy. He's got a lot of really good traits. He's just, can he actually develop into something? So it's a good pick in the 6th round.
Hodge is one of many in this conversation who are praising the Chalk Talk from today, but also in other recent days. And for anybody who's not familiar with this, it's also on our channel, on the DK Pittsburgh Sports YouTube channel, as well as, of course, on our website and app. And it's going to be a regular thing. It's not going away. When you say you like something and then you show that you like something, we definitely listen. And you've shown great support for this video. Make sure that you check it out. There's somebody else asked a specific question about one of the Chalk Talks. I want to put it up here. It was just about when are you going to get to the rest of the clips? I didn't know exactly what was meant by that. Oh, here, it's from Cody. So when are you putting up your clips for the rest? Oh, you mean the rest of the draft picks?
They're coming. They're coming each day. Tomorrow's going to be Jack Sawyer. I'm going in order. So tomorrow's Chalk Talk will be on Jack Sawyer. The day after that it'll be YA Black. The day after that it'll be Will Howard, and it's Monday through Friday. So that's what these are gonna. That's what's happening.
Lots of complaints I see in here that Loudermilk was retained while Mon Adams was let go. I'm going to keep saying this again and again and again and again. You're forgetting about special teams. Loudermilk's on special teams. Mon really wasn't. Mon was on the sideline waiting for an opportunity to spell somebody. He wasn't doing that.
Didn't Loudermilk have a blocked field goal or a blocked extra point last season?
Loudermilk's made some impact on special teams too. I don't know why we're constantly forgetting this. Special teams really matter.
And the other thing to take into account.
Yes, he did to answer the question. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought he did. And so the other part of this to remember is you have to look at who you have on in that room. They already have Keanu Benton, which Carl Dunbar doubled down on the fact that Keanu Benton's a nose tackle. Like that, when they're in their 3-4, Keanu Benton's going to be their nose. Now, he still said he's going to be one of the two, or can be one of the two down linemen or interior linemen when they're in sub packages, and that's great. But so that's one nose. You just got Y.A. Black, which while he did say that Y.A. Black can play their defensive end, he's also a nose tackle. He played nose tackle at Iowa. He has the experience to do so. Do you really is there a real chance that you're going to have 3 nose tackles on your defensive line come when you set your 53-man roster? No, you're not. This gives Mon Adams a chance, who has taken himself from being a practice squad guy to going to go actually get a job where he can play meaningful snaps.
Andrew Stafford has a good question here. How did Will Howard drop to the 6th round? His tape looks very promising, much better than some of the guys that went in rounds 2 through 5. What was it that knocked him down the way that it did?
Well, I don't know if it's just necessarily Howard. A lot of the quarterbacks in general fell. I mean, obviously the talk of the weekend for everyone outside of Pittsburgh was Shedeur Sanders falling to the 5th round, but he wasn't the only quarterback taken later. There was talk about Jalen Milroe possibly going in the 2nd round. He didn't go till near the end of the 3rd. A lot of quarterbacks were taken. And again, it just goes to show what everybody thought of this quarterback class. It just was not a very good quarterback class.
William asks, hey, DK and Chris, are there any spots the Steelers still need to address, and which free agents are available to fill those? Kind of a multi-layered question here, but I think, bang, slot corner. Now, I liked a lot of what I saw from Beanie Bishop. I don't get the sense that the Steelers necessarily, specifically Mike Tomlin, feel the same. Like you could appreciate what Beanie did, certainly in terms of the splash. At one point, Beanie was generating all the splash. Remember, right around the midpoint of the season. But if they saw something in Beanie where they said, "Well, that's our guy," we'd already know that. It doesn't mean they're right or wrong. It just means that's how they clearly feel. So they undoubtedly feel like they still need to get somebody. There's been no move on that front.
No, and I think there are a couple of reasons.
Eccles, I take that back. Eccles can, right?
Yeah,
Brandon Eccles can play. Brandon Eccles can play inside or outside.
And then you also do have, and again, if people want to just shrug him off because he's a 7th round pick, well, Beanie Bishop was an undrafted free agent. So, but 7th round pick Dante Kent, he can play in the slot. He has played in the slot. He's a really productive tackler and was at Central Michigan. I don't want to rule him out, just like we didn't want to rule Beanie Bishop out. And then also, again, the Steelers like to use 3 safety sets, which if you're using 3 safeties, you're not using a slot corner because that 3rd safety is pretty much taking up what that slot corner would be doing. So you're also going to see a lot of times in which Minkah Fitzpatrick, Deshaun Elliott, and Juan Thornhill are all on the field at the same time.
Mike Jones says Tyler Shuck being picked at 40, though. But everybody knew Shuck was the most NFL ready, and there are teams that value that. There's teams that value, hey, he's further along in his development. We don't have to wonder what he'll become because we have more background on him. Scorpio says if Aaron Rodgers does not come here, would Will Howard be able to back up Mason Rudolph? He seems like a surefire 3rd QB all year for development. That is exactly what will happen. If Mason Rudolph is your starter, there will be another player brought in from the outside. No doubt in my mind.
I really do think, and again, this is based off of conversations because it's come up. This is based off of conversations I've had with those on the inside, that if things do fall through with Aaron Rodgers, I would not be surprised whatsoever if they try to trade for Kirk Cousins. I would not be surprised whatsoever if that were to happen. They still, if things fall through with Rodgers, I have it on very good authority that they would still like to add another veteran quarterback. That's the way it's been worded to me, that they would still try to go get another veteran quarterback. And when you look at the list of veteran quarterbacks that are still available, either in free agency or via trade, it's not a very long list.
The PEF asks, do the Steelers see undrafted free agent Sebastian Castro as a safety or a slot corner, or both? Before you take that one, Chris, I'm just going to say, if you're an undrafted free agent, you'd better not be narrowing your own field. You'd better be open, willing, and by the way, capable of playing anywhere you're told to in the secondary.
Yeah, and he definitely has the capability to play multiple. He's a little bit position versatile. He had, I think, like, I actually just brought up the stats here because I've been seeing a lot of people asking about the UDFAs, and so I already just brought up what I wrote on that. But Castro, I mean, in 53 games for Iowa, he had 163 tackles in 53 games. That's a good amount for a defensive back. 14 tackles for loss, 18 passes defense, 5 forced fumbles, and 2 sacks. So he definitely can do a number of different things. But again, that's just going to be another hand in the pile when you're talking about that slot corner, third safety position.
I love Florida Dave's question here. He's talking about Will Howard. He says, this lack of arm strength. And he's talking about Howard here. He says, is just an overblown thing that gets passed around, or is it real? Because I saw a video of Howard throwing some bombs. He just throws very smooth. Chris, when you were at these Senior Bowls and combines and so forth, and they're referring to arm strength, they're referring to an NFL arm or a big arm, are they just talking about how far you throw the ball, or whether it goes 60, 65 yards, or, and this has been my experience, and I'm curious to hear yours, it's been way more about from me to you, right where you are, 15 yards away. How quickly do I get it to you? How many different arm angles can I utilize to get it to you? When I think of arm strength, I'm going to date the reference here a little bit. Some of you might go back this far, but I think of Jeff George when he was with the Colts. He could do the bombs, but the thing that made George so striking when you watched him was just there's me, there's you, boom, right between the numbers. That's what I think of. And then when I have seen Howard, from what I've seen on him on tape, I can understand why people would have questions, because some of his shorter passes, and he threw a lot of them, in particular in that championship game against Notre Dame, and watched the entire game, they were complete. Guys were open, but they were these little college-looking passes, you know, the ones where the ball does a little bit of a dance on the way to the receiver.
Yep. Yeah. So the one thing I really want, and again, I'm not trying, I even had somebody ask, because I use the term quite a bit, and I even had somebody ask, what do you mean when you say, and the term is actually arm talent, not necessarily arm strength. And arm talent is more encompassing of what you just described. It's not just how strong your arm is. It is what can you do when you're throwing the football, when everything's working fine, where you can drop back 5 steps, when you hit your 5th step, you step up, you throw, or you hitch, you whatever, or you just hit your 5th step and you throw. But what do you do when you're under pressure? What do you do when you're off platform? Off platform means you're not throwing from your base set. You're having to throw off your back foot, or you're having to throw on the run. Arm talent is an all-encompassing thing. How much does your arm itself bail you out of, not so great of circumstances? And people like Aaron Rodgers, for example, when he was in his heyday, made his living by having exceptional arm talent. And again, you still see it every now and then. He had a throw against the Dolphins last year, which was ridiculous, and shows that, okay, that's the guy. Now you can see why he was a 4-time MVP at one point. You have that arm talent is a big thing.
It's yeah, and there's a lot to it. There's also one of the things that I think of when I think of arm talent in the modern context is Patrick Mahomes throwing against his body. the rolling to the right and then throwing clear across the field to his left. It's like, come on, man.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be able to do that. And he'll do it without turning the whole way. He just has this ability to get rid of it a lot of different ways. By the way, another player that was talked about in this draft class a lot that way since he just came up was Shuck.
Yeah.
He was a guy that can do a lot of different things with the football. I think of it more from the standpoint of like a point guard passing in basketball. You got to have all of the various,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's me doing the Nikola Jokic thing. He's not a point guard, obviously, but these kinds of passes. And
oh yeah. Oh, and Doncic did the same thing with Dallas for the longest time. He would have those over the head or whatever. Yeah.
What do they have in common, Chris? What do those two guys have in common? No, both of them are Serbs. Don't listen to anybody who tells you that Doncic is Slovenian. Top Gun says John Elway had a cannon, but he had zero finesse and was not the best quarterback. Elway? We're talking about the same guy? There's no way you're talking about John Elway to say that.
He might have been the most.
John Elway could do everything.
I honestly don't think that there's ever been I don't think there's ever been a quarterback that had more hype coming out of the draft than John Elway.
Well, especially considering what he tried to do. He refused to go to a certain team. He desisted going. He called a lot of attention to himself, but he matched it.
I'm sorry.
Look what he did. How do you say anything negative about Elway's career? It's like, everybody's biting back now. Okay.
I don't know about that one, man. Like,
yeah,
you still have a really, really good case for him being a top 5 quarterback of all time. Like, really, really great case for that.
And not to mention, he took his team there, he got them there, and even when he was an old guy, and that was in the TD days, he was the one that was pushing himself across the line. It's like John Elway.
The highlight of him getting hit near the goal line and spinning around in the air will always be one of the most iconic Super Bowl highlights ever.
And I'm not sure you're going to get people in Pittsburgh who have a good memory to say anything negative about Elway and how he performed in big games, considering what he did over at Three River Stadium.
Yeah, that was that year. That was the year of that Steelers or that Broncos Packers Super Bowl, Super Bowl 32. That was that the Broncos beat the Steelers in Three Rivers in the AFC Championship to get to that Super Bowl.
I was in that locker room, actually. I was covering the Broncos that day for the newspaper. Wow. I was doing the visiting team. Yeah. So all those guys that were on that team, the TDs and the Sharps and the so forth.
Yeah. And boy, Ben Roethlisberger wore number 7 because of John Elway.
Yeah. How did we get dragged down a John Elway's not a very good quarterback rabbit hole here?
That one just gets me.
I've
never had any allegiance at all to the Broncos, but I'm like, I've never ever questioned John Elway as a quarterback.
It happens. Dallas comes in with, if you could put Mason Rudolph's passion into Aaron Rodgers' body, then you'd have a Super Bowl quarterback. I'm not going to question Aaron Rodgers' general passion. I mean, I've been tough on this whole thing, but you do not. We're starting to go off the rails here. You don't get to be a four-time MVP and not have passion for what it is that you're doing. You were just talking about Elway here. You can make top 5, top 3 arguments for Rodgers.
I'm going to pull it up while you're talking about this. Keep going.
No, number 1 is Brady. I don't want to. There's no, okay.
Uh-huh.
And I understand Rodgers just won the one Super Bowl, the one everybody knows here, but somebody else that beat the Steelers in the playoffs. And Jordy Nelson had a great game too and all that other stuff, but Rodgers made it and he won it. He also was a 4-time MVP, even with the favoritism that goes with the quarterback position to be MVP. That's insane. Go ahead, Chris.
Okay. So Pro Football Reference has some
passion.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Pro Football Reference has something called a Hall of Fame monitor. And they give you a score, and it's a formula, and they explain the formula. Tom Brady's at the top, obviously, and it lets you know. Now, the average player, the average Hall of Fame quarterback scores 108 on their monitor. That's their score. Tom Brady's at the top at 263.03. So that's the GOAT of all time. Peyton Manning is right behind him at 257.8. The next guy on the list is Aaron Rodgers at 197.26. That's above Brett Favre. That's above Johnny Unitas, Joe Montana, Drew Brees, John Elway. He's absolutely top 5, if not top 3 of all time.
There's some passion involved in that. Scorpio says being 42 and willing to endure a season in a cold city. Man, you haven't been to Pittsburgh in a while.
Where did he play all of his career?
He played in Green Bay, but on top of that, it's not even cold here anymore. It stopped being cold about like 6-7 years ago, and we've never really gone back. This Ed says, can we please stop with the 4-time MVP as if it matters? Yes, it matters. Because if Rodgers is okay, I want everyone to hear this, because I think there's this sense that I hate him or whatever. I was like, I don't know the guy at all. And I don't know anything about this personal stuff that people reference. I'm just not interested. I've never covered him, right? If you're a 4-time MVP and you come with that pedigree, and you are still physically capable, and you are still motivated, and this goes back to the passion thing, and it might have been what was being brought up there. If you're still motivated by there's something that drives you for an additional achievement. This is the part where I get skeptical, and I see him with his toes in the sand on the beach, and everybody else is probably thinking a lot of the same stuff. Excuse me. I want to hear from Rodgers one and only one thing, if and when he signs in Pittsburgh, and that is why.
Yeah.
Not why Pittsburgh, not why the Steelers. Why are you playing? Mm-hmm. Why are you back? What is it? What's incomplete? What's missing from your resume or your repertoire, or do you just like want to keep going? Do you know what I'm saying, Chris?
Yeah, I get that.
To me is everything.
It is a legitimate question, and I do think, now this is me speculating, but this is based off of things that when you're watching the Pat McAfee show and you're listening to people like AJ Hawk talk about him, and AJ Hawk is close with him, you hear things like he just loves the game of football. And a lot of these all-time greats, I can't think, and I know you can attest to this as you cover the team for a long time, there might not be a person on the planet who loves hockey more than Sidney Crosby, like the actual game of hockey. And so if Aaron Rodgers has a true love of football in a similar realm, and you don't become an all-time great quarterback the way Rodgers has without some sort of passion and love for the game. And then also, again, this is kind of conjecture on my part, but there's probably a really good part of him that doesn't want his career to end with the absolute catastrophe that was that 2-year stint with the Jets. He probably wants a good chance to try to compete for something like a lot of other older quarterbacks have as their careers have come to an end. Peyton Manning with the Broncos, Tom Brady with the Buccaneers. These are not Brett Favre, even with the Vikings, went to an NFC championship. This does happen to a lot of the older greats.
Scorpio says he's trying to further explain the comment here, and then he says, but it's not a dome. I'm sure it hurts taking hits. He says, I'm writing from Orlando where it's too hot. It's 80 degrees outside, my man. Okay, we're not, whatever you have in your head about what Pittsburgh used to be, it's not anymore. It is actually 80 degrees outside right now.
I'm only wearing a hoodie because my air conditioner is on upstairs and it makes my basement cold.
Yeah, the climate has in fact changed.
We did have a pretty good winter though.
Michael Barnett says these MVP awards are voted on by many journalists nationwide, and fewer. This is actually not true. That's not how you're thinking of baseball. I'm a baseball Hall of Fame voter. The MVP awards are the MVP awards, the ones that count toward the NFL or the AP ones. Okay, that's the ones. It's not the PFWA ones, which get unfortunately very, very little notice. The AP one is done by a select group. By the way, you mentioned Peyton Manning going to the Hall of Fame. Did you ever hear this story, Chris, about, you know how at the Hall of Fame they do like an assembly of writers at just before the Super Bowl?
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay. Yeah. And do you know this story?
Yes, I do, but
Okay, it's incredible.
It's so good.
So the way it's supposed to work is somebody who has covered that player, if they believe in this, is supposed to stand before the room and make a presentation on this player's behalf. And these tend to go about like 10 or 15 minutes or so. They'll get into some statistics and whatever. And it's a little bit awkward because the reporters are supposed to be impartial, but everyone understands it. Dale Lawley did it when he was working for us. He did it on behalf of Troy Polamalu. He was representing DK Pittsburgh Sports, but he was giving the Troy Polamalu case, right?
Correct.
So the writer from the Indianapolis Star stands up in front of this room when it was his turn and says, Peyton Manning, and sits down. That's it. That was his presentation. And of course, Manning gets universal selection. That's my favorite Hall of Fame story ever. And it obviously wasn't all that long ago. I think everybody should do that from now on when you have one of these total no-brainer guys, right?
Absolutely. I mean, whenever Tom Brady can become, eligible to be voted into the Hall of Fame, what pitch do you actually have to make? The person who has to make that pitch doesn't even have to say a word. All they have to do is hold up.
Oh yeah, right. And
that's
just
all you got to do.
Down. Yeah.
Yep, that's it.
Just sit back down. That'll be the end of that. We'll take one more today, and let me go through the stars here to make sure that I didn't miss anybody here. Zach Hall asks, who's going to have a bigger this year? Will it be Derek Harmon or will it be Caleb Johnson? I'm going to say before Chris, I'd like you to add your thoughts on this as well. I'm going to say that your running back is always going to have the opportunity to make a quicker impact. If Caleb Johnson is in camp as RB2, meaning after he shows everybody that he can pick up blitzes and block, then he's going to get a lot of snaps. Harmon, he's got people to beat out. And he's going to be able to spell people, but I don't know if it's going to be out there as a regular on the defensive line. We'll see.
I do think that if you're talking about immediate impact, probably Caleb Johnson, because again, you're talking about there. I mean, nothing against Jaylen Warren, but he's not a bell cow RB1. He's guaranteed 350 touches this season or anything like that. There's definitely, even with Najee Harris, when he was RB1, there was definitely some sort of rotation or tandem. It'll be the same thing. There's going to be touches split, and Caleb Johnson is going to touch the ball quite a bit this season. It wouldn't surprise me if he gets as many as 150 touches between carries and receptions. Derek Harmon, I think he can step in and make an impact as a rookie, but his might be more of a slow burn when it comes to the type of impact that he makes. But I do think he could become a very impactful player for the team.
Do the Steelers view Howard as that guy? Servant wants to know with the contribution, or is he a tweener to the next draft? I think he's just another body. I think he's just, this is the stuff I've been talking about for weeks now that I wanted to see. Bring him in. Let's find out. If he is, great. If he isn't, 6th round pick. Butthole wants to know from you, Chris, do you think Jedrick Wills would be a good option?
Possibly. I mean, you could always look and see if you could bring him in, see if he's willing to play like a swing tackle role. If you can get him for pretty cheap, why not? At least bring him in for a visit, see if the stars align there. If not, no big deal. But yeah, I think right now, and especially now, just to let everybody know, any free agent signings that happen now do not impact the compensatory formula for next year. That's done. So Steelers are currently projected to get the maximum of 4. That doesn't become official until next March. But now no free agent signings can possibly impact it. That part is done.
That's a lot of picks they're going to be making right across the river. Chris, let's do it again tomorrow. Caught the boss off of guard there with that sudden ending. Chris, let's do it again tomorrow. And she's like, what? Button. we got it taken care of. We had some members only shows through this draft, for those of you who don't know. And there were 3 of them. There was one on each, I should say, night following the draft. 2 of them began at midnight, and we still had a ton of people in there. It was really cool. And then the third one, the one on after day 3, I think we started that one around, is that 8 o'clock? Sound right? 8 o'clock? And had a ton more. Just a lot of fun. Not to mention that we had Andy Whittle and Omar Khan passing in the background and waving as they walked by. And I think it really allowed people to see some stuff that they don't normally see, hear some stuff that they don't normally hear. The place to join us is to go to the URL, dkps.net/join. I want to go through some business here and take care of, since we ran a little long, because we were just having that much fun today. Zach Hall with a couple bucks, a contribution there. Servant with 5. David Kranak came in with 5 gifts. Kenneth McNair is a new member. And as you can see on the ticker below, we've had quite a few of those lately. We are at an all-time high of 2,079, with a goal still of getting to 3,000 before the Steelers set foot on the campus of St. Vincent College. Cody came in with a couple of bucks. Matt Sellers is a new member. DV with 5. Cody decided he wasn't done. Russell with a couple of bucks. Hadass has done this before. That's $5 for him. Jacob with a couple right there. Mark Hubbard came in with 20 gifts. And if you're a new member and you don't know how you became a new member, that's something that YouTube takes care of automatically. Meaning Mark puts those in the pool and then you get a free month. So that's it only lasts you a month, and when it expires, but it's a pretty nice thing. We're going to be doing more of these types of shows, the members only shows. That was just way too fun to not do it again. Plus you get, there's some trolls and so forth that come in or whatever, and they're not going to pay to come in. That's something that we've noticed at DK Pittsburgh Sports, which is a separate subscription thing in our comment section. If you come in there, you're going to have a troll-free experience. You just, what are you doing, with your miserable life if you got a troll online? Go outside, touch grass, as the kids say. Anyway, I think I got them all here. Did I get David Kranak? Did I get David? 5. Christian Klaus came in as a new member. Matt came in as a new member. Hodge has been with us for 2 years now, and Hodge is a great and valued member, I should say, or this community. Some of the best comments that we have, some of the best questions that come along. And Matthew Vaughn jumps in. He just comes sliding in under the garage door with a gift of 10 to get more of you involved in this little community of ours. I'm going to end today's program with this one from Slainax, appropriately enough on the day that Mike Sullivan is out as the Penguins coach. He says, I'm 40 and I have seen the Penguins win 5 Stanley Cups. Anybody who wonders why this team means what they do to this city, that's difficult to touch. They've touched multiple generations, but at the same time, a lot of us have seen all 5 of them. And that's some pretty special territory. He was a big part of the last 2. Guys, let's do it again tomorrow. Yeah. Okay, I'm trying to unmute Chris's mic here.